A very good morning to you on this 22nd day of August. It is a Friday morning. I trust that those of you who had a good sleep are back at the grindstone, on your way to work, ready for the day. For those who've had a challenging night, here's some refreshment for you as we talk you through the storyline on this channel of the book of Ephesians. A letter written to a believing community that needed refinement concerning synchronicity, for how that God and the people of God and events coalesce together, how they work together, how the assembly functions in the midst of reality, in the midst of what is really real. And the focus is on this body, the assembly. It's that amoebic modality that we've been talking about. It is alive, it lives and moves, and that's the beauty of it. It is not static, nor is it stagnant, but it moves. And so across the 6 chapters, 115 verses of them, the writer is talking the believers through the plan for the assembly and what prompts the assembly. The assembly is prompted to live in a particular way. You will notice that the assembly follows a way of living, a way of life. Not 10 rules, not 613 laws, not 5 techniques, but it's a way of life. It's no coincidence that Jesus describes himself in John 14, verse 6, as the true and living way. And the true and living way has to do with the fact that he is the one who is the very life of this assembly. The assembly is an amoebic modality that moves in fidelity to the flow of reality. Now that is important to remember. The flow of reality. The scriptures orients us to the reality that we are in and affords us movement in a non-drifting kind of way. That's what an orientation is. It is the affordance of movement in a non-drifting kind of way. And that non-drifting kind of way is described in the text as that which orients us. And so we are looking at we went through verse 15 and verse 16 in a previous episode. Now we are embarking on 17 and 18. Because in this paragraph, going from verse 14 to 18, the writer is tracking God's way of bridging the chasm of factional hostility. Remember, there is factional hostility between Jew and Gentile. The Jews are the privileged, franchised, chosen, elected, selected people of God. But now God has drawn in the non-Jew, the Gentile, in a unique way and put them into one body. The emphasis is one body, where the playing field is leveled. Jews don't come in through the front door and Gentiles through the back door, which is pretty much the Old Testament way. When non-Jews or Gentiles proselytized and they became Jews, or they embraced Judaism, the males were of course, circumcised, and they were called early in the New Testament era, uh, just after the resurrection of Christ. When we get into Acts 2, we discover that they are called God-fearers. They are God-fearers. They have embraced God, but short of proselytizing to the Jewish faith. So they are following the monotheistic God of the Hebrew scriptures, but they have fallen short just of embracing Judaism, which came through circumcision. But now what God is doing is something brand new. There is great novelty here. And we're going to talk about this novelty in greater detail in scene 3 of the story. Chapter 3 of Ephesians is going to talk about this novelty as a mystery. But here it's already paused as what God is doing in Christ. That's how the writer is pausing the death of Christ. The death abolished the law in verse 15 of commandments expressed in ordinances, so that God could create in himself one new man, an alternative society, an urban alternative, if you will, where the two are one, and thus there is peace. Verse 16 continues that idea that God has brought us from hostility to amity, from a place of being an enemy to the place of being a friend, from enemy to friend, reconciliation. We have been reconciled. Our hostility toward God was appeased through the death of Christ, not the other way around. Not God's hostility toward us, our hostility toward God, thereby killing that hostility or annihilating it. Now in verse 17, the writer says, and he, that is Christ, came and preached peace to you who were far off, that is Gentiles, and peace to those who were near, that would be Jews. He came and he preached peace to both entities and drew them into something new, something novel. Now, we understand that as we move from the Old Testament into the New Testament, and incidentally, the New Testament starts with the death of the testator according to Hebrews chapter 9. So your New Testament officially starts with the death of Christ, not with the Gospel of Matthew as we commonly would say. Now take note of that, because right there you have a major shift, a discontinuity. No more sacrifices, because the main sacrifice, who is Jesus, has been offered up to God as the one who brings peace between Jew and Gentile. And he came and preached peace to you who are far off and peace to those who are near. You see, he came and proclaimed what we call the reintegration of what was fragmented, what was shattered. And he proclaimed to you who are far off, Gentiles, and reintegration of what was fragmented to those who were in close proximity, or should I say closer proximity, the Jew. Because the Jew was elected by God to be the chosen channel for salvation. Watch how I'm articulating that. The Jewish nation would become the chosen vessel for the introduction of salvation into all the world. The Jew would be the channel. And you can read of this in another story called the book of Romans, because Romans is the unfolding of the story of how God gets the ain't right put right in order to be right through Israel for the world. There you have a summary of all 16 chapters of the storyline. I will repeat that. The book of Romans is how God gets the ain't right, sinners, put right, saints, in order to become right, sanctified, or as we say, transformed through Israel. That's Romans 9, 10, and 11 for the world. 12 to 16. How do we live in this world under the mercies of God? The mercies that Romans 12, 1 and 2 talks about. Paul says, I urge you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, there are at least 12 or 13 mercies tracked in the first 11 chapters of the story. So those who are far off have come near. There is peace between the two entities, Jew and Gentile, because of Jesus. And he has reintegrated what is fragmented. He's brought the two into one, thus making peace. Now, verse number 18. For through him, we both, Jew and Gentile, have access in one spirit to the Father. It is through him that we, both Jew and Gentile, have access in one spirit to the source of all being. And the source of all being is God. Now, access is a crucial, crazy thing, isn't it? When you feel left out, when you feel locked out, when you feel pushed to one side, when you are not seen. That's why we so often say to people, I see you, and I hear you, and you are present, you are noted, because it's God who gives us access through Christ to himself. I learned a song as a kid which said, I am the door, by me if any man enter in, he shall be saved, he shall be saved, he shall be saved. Christ is the door. He's the one who gives us access to a new and living way, a freshly slaughtered way. That's what Hebrews 9 and 10 talks about. He has inaugurated a new way. He has cut a new way for us through the veil. That's why when the veil was torn, it wasn't torn from bottom to top. It was rent from top to bottom. It would take about 50 oxen on each end to be able to tear that veil in two. And it was rent in two when Christ died on Calvary, thus showing that we have access to the throne room of God through the blood of Christ, through the body that was given for you and I. And so this morning, we don't come in as stepchildren. Gentiles are not stepchildren. Hulle is nie stiefkinders nie, né? They're not second or third class citizens in the family of God. All of us come in as those who are broken, fragmented. Our lives have been wrecked and ruined because of sin and its impact on our lives. And God puts it back together again as only He can. He is the one who bridges the chasm of factional hostility between Jew and Gentile, thus creating an alternative society. This is such a beautiful section because in Him there is peace. In Him there is unity. But why so much disunity in the family of God? Well, that definitely is a discussion for another episode. But God has reconciled both parties, Jew and Gentile, into an alternative society, which is to be salt and light in the midst of a crooked and a perverse nation. And oh, how we need that salt and light to permeate, to beam across the nation into the lives of men and women because of how we live Not just because of what we say, because we say so much. Let your walk talk louder than your talk talks is a song of a day gone by. Let your walk talk louder than your talk talks. And unless they see this peace between peoples, they're not going to buy it. I was very challenged when we saw what happened in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I think the upside was at least there was a shot in the right direction to work at reconciliation, even though many Christians would say God was not at the center. The redeeming work of Christ was not at the heart of what was being championed. Now, that may be so. But I have often wondered, for us as a people group of a so-called colored people group, what it would have been like if we had been more strongly represented as a people that brings peoples together. Because we come from a mixed, multiplex, multifaceted, variegated background. And we had the ability to show what that looks like because we are neither black, nor white, nor pink, nor green. We are a mixture, like the label on a medicine bottle, mixture. And the role we could have played as bridging the gap between peoples. But you see, when the family fails, the church fails. When the church fails, the culture fails. When the culture fails, the nation fails. And if God has called his church to be salt and light, then we surely need to have something down of what reintegration and reconciliation looks like as the people of God, right inside of the believing community. But oh, we have become so rivalrous ourselves. We are at each other's throats. Well, what are we mirroring to a world that is falling apart and coming unglued at the seams? The writer here pauses this dilemma of humanity and shows how that Christ stands at the center of unifying peoples, because he is that which unifies. You need to experience him in order to experience peace. Out of the 43,000 denominations that we have on the planet, how is it that we cannot forge in the same direction if we embrace Jesus as Lord? Now, that's the qualifier, embracing Jesus as Lord and Savior. So I trust that as you go into this day, it's a Friday, you'll have opportunities again to touch people and touch lives. Who are you in hostile connection with? Are you connecting through hostility, or are you connecting from the position of amity? You are amorous. You are showing love. You are being loving and kind. Because that is what draws people. Not hostility, but amity. Remember Francis Schaeffer's words to the church in the latter half of the 20th century. He said that love is the final apologetic, and it will still stand as the final apologetic between peoples, between a husband and a wife who had loggerheads, between parents and children, between believers in the family of God, between church and churches. He is the glue that holds things together. Take the opportunity today to get in front of someone that you are not correctly aligned with or rightfully aligned with, and make an effort to sort out the basis for reintegration in that relationship. He is our peace, who has made both one and given us access in one spirit to the Father. I trust that you will enjoy the day as you go with God. Goodbye for now.